Hello, good morning. Here at Archaeo Soup Towers, our focus has always been all of human history. 200,000 years of astonishing achievements by an incredible species, namely Homo sapiens, human beings. In those 200,000 years, we've seen culture, art, music, clothing, language, philosophy, observations about the world around us and ourselves, which have changed the world around us and ourselves. We're truly an incredible species and well worth studying. However, in those 200,000 years, we've also seen an equally astonishing spiral, where we forever seeking more ingenious ways to hurt one another, from interpersonal violence to culturally complicated and managed blood feuds, from inter-clan warfare to warfare between nation-states, the phenomenon of nationalism, which groups people based upon political or arbitrary categories, economic systems which don't benefit everyone who takes part. We're very, very good at hurting each other, just as good as we are at creating beauty and finding meaning in this universe. Human beings are truly remarkable. Now, at the beginning of 2014, I promised you that this channel would not become overly focused on the First World War throughout the course of this 4-year centenary of the Great War. As I say, our focus is beyond the 20th century, and I didn't want this to become some sort of memorial, say marking every battle as it took place. However, I've chosen to mark today. And the reason why I'm choosing to mark today, and for example, instead of, say, the anniversary of when Franz Ferdinand was shot, is because today marks a very particular event. It's when Britain was brought into the First World War, the Great War. Now, I'm not doing this for nationalistic reasons. Of course it's important to me partly because I'm British, but it's actually because this marks the beginning of a drip feed. The beginning of a change in the concept of warfare, certainly in Europe, when no longer were the citizens immune in terms of targets. It wasn't just the opposing nation's army which were viable targets. You see, every man, woman and child in this country, and indeed in other countries across the world, for 100 years has seen images and heard stories of the suffering and loss which the First World War wrought upon humanity. But we can never really actually understand it. We can never really understand what it's like to be in the First World War, or to fight, say, in the trenches or at Gallipoli or any other place, at the Battle of Jutland, for example. Those of us who are a little bit older, maybe a generation or two older than me, may have an understanding of what it's like to be a citizen at home who's at risk. Total war, so-called, when, as I say, no longer is the opposing army the viable target, but the entire nation in the opposing side is a viable target. The home front, so-called, a famous term from the Second World War, but also in the First World War, was a term which came to be. The Great War saw the beginning of everyone being touched by war. If your country was at war, everyone in that country was at war, not just the army. Now, this, I think, is worthwhile marking, this moment. And it didn't happen immediately, it happened over the course of many months. But this marked a big change, and I think this has had a huge effect on humanity through the 20th century and the 21st century so far. Now, we find ourselves privileged. I certainly find myself privileged. It is difficult to imagine how war can enter into everyday life. But this evening I've been asked to talk actually about precisely this, the way in which the First World War started to creep into everyday life at home in Britain. And the only way I could think of to explain this or to talk about this was to look at some local newspapers from 100 years ago, and to try and give us a sense of the immediacy of this encroaching home front of war. This local newspaper, dated the 7th of August 1914, notes a remarkable response to the call to war. 36 men were wanted, and 60 fishermen signed up in a very short time for the Royal Naval Reserve Trawler Section. They dealt with minesweeping, net tending, patrol work, and also to escort convoys. people were eager to fight for their country. Also, this article notes Boy Scouts mobilized for dispatch riding, guarding bridges, culverts and telegraph lines against damage by spies and others, and also notes that the Sea Scouts may be deployed in watching estuaries and ports, and those with a knowledge of first aid could render help in nursing and dressing stations. The Scouts would later be deployed under Admiralty orders, taking on the role of Coast Guards. By the 27th of August, the message was everywhere. Men were wanted at once from the North Shields and district. 1,000 young men, ages 19 to 30, to enlist for Lord Kitchener's army. Who will volunteer? The poster asks. On the 16th of September, recruitment went up a notch when the Mayor of Tynemouth addressed young men and footballers. The Mayor, Councillor H. Gregg himself, accompanied by members of the council, together with Major McGill, the recruiting officer for the borough, attended the first performance of a stirring photoplay, The Aerial Invasion. The newspaper article said, "This should be a bugle call to patriotic citizens." It states the following Saturday, at the match between West Stanley and North Shields Athletic, the Mayor, Alderman Black and other gentlemen will be present and will address the players and spectators with a view to securing recruits. On the 30th of September, a new rifle club opened in North Shields. The article stated that a shooting range formerly existed at Little Bedford Street, which came into existence during a wave of patriotism at the time of the Boer War. It went on to state that time has only proved what the Boer War taught, namely the paramount necessity of rifle shooting. Not only were citizens now training for war, but they were on standby in case they were attacked. In December, a warning came. Important notice. Notice is hereby given that the Tynemouth Emergency Committee is advised by the military authorities to have the gas turned off at the works at once for military reasons. There is a rumour that a battle is now proceeding in the North Sea, and there is a possibility of a hostile attack on Tynemouth. The civil population of the borough are advised to remain indoors, but if they feel the necessity to leave their dwellings, they should proceed in the direction of Newcastle. The committee are advised that there is no reason for undue alarm, and they strongly urge that the civil population should not leave the town. If it should be considered necessary to leave the district, notice will be given. Signed, the Honourable Mayor Gregg. Town Hall, Tynemouth, 16th of December, 1914. While in this instance North Shields was spared shelling, Hartlepool and Scarborough were hard hit. 137 people were killed, 592 were injured. This was truly total war. The following year, 1915, the spring saw Zeppelins drop bombs on the northeast of England. Wallsend, where I live, was particularly hard hit because of the shipyards. This was most certainly the beginning of a change in how we view nations at war and how we view the citizenry of those nations when we're at war. This is why I've chosen to mark today. Now, today, in many countries, for example in my country, we are privileged to live a life which is compartmentalized. We have home, we have school, we have work, we have play, we have roles which are clearly defined in society. But this evening will mark the moment when the lines were decidedly blurred for people across the world, and also at home for me in Britain. No longer were people clearly at work, for example, or at school. Many schools closed down, many jobs changed. No longer were little boys simply little boys. They were now under the orders of the Admiralty. No longer were families together. They were about to be split up. 100 years on from that day, I thought it was worthwhile just taking a moment to reflect on the fact that this is the moment when things changed for so many people. And that effect, I would argue, has rung out through the century and continues to be with us today. I just thought I'd give us all an opportunity just to think about it and to reflect on this moment. So there won't be too many more of these anniversaries that I mark, but this one I thought was worthwhile. Until next time.